That was Flowers Endlessly Open by Daniela Terranova. The video to the whole piece, which is played by Trio Catch, can be found under this video. So the link to the whole performance of the Trio Catch can be found under our video here. And I definitely recommend it because the trio not only performed Daniela's piece, but they also explain how they produced the different sounds of the piece, and they explain their own feelings, their own perception of the piece, which is something quite unique. And I would definitely suggest you to check it out. Daniela is an Italian composer working in the area of concert music, opera, and extended sonic environments. Her recent work revolves around the sound substance conceived as sonic dramaturgy, strongly linked to an exploration of the matter the instruments are made of. Her work has won several national and international competitions, including CIA Prize, first prize at the international competition Gianni Bergamo Classic Music Award, the prize New Music at Teatro La Fenice, the prize Franco Donatoni International Meeting for Young Composers, which led her work to be performed by Divertimento Ensemble in Milan. Her music has been performed at many festivals and concert seasons: Biennale Musica 2019, Venice, IRCAM's concert season, London Sinfonieta's concert season, Vienna Konzerthaus, Ultraschall Berlin, the Festival für Neue Musik, the Festival Mixture, and Festival Barcelona Modern, Budapest Music Center, Time of Music Festival, and Vitasari Festival, in which she got the support of Ernst von Siemens Foundation. In 2016, her piece Sleep Landscape was performed in Stockholm, Cardiff, and Tallinn by Camerata Nordica with soprano Amy Corkery and saxophonist Virgo Veldi for the project Contemporary Classic Music in the EU. The piece has glassy harmonics, creating a shrill and unnerving opening, sustained to create an almost surreal dreamscape. This is how Lucy Jeffrey describes Daniela's piece in her review for Seen and Heard International, a live review site for opera, ballet, concert, broadcasts, and theater. Daniela, thank you very much for doing the interview. I would like to know, when and how did your interest in contemporary music begin? How did your style of composition change in years?
Hi, Nava. Well, my interest in contemporary music has grown over time because my musical background was quite classical, I could say. I think that for me it was very important to attend the Impulse Academy in Graz more than 15 years ago, because in 1 week I had the possibility to experience a lot of contemporary music played by Klangforum and other amazing musicians. I met many very talented young composers. It was intense and scary. And after that, I studied a lot in order to experiment with sounds, find a way to express my ideas, and find a way to be genuine.
Can you explain a little what you mean by genuine?
To be genuine, for me, is choosing means coherent with ideas, trying to define the right context for developing my imagination, for developing my sound world step by step.
How do you generally compose? How do you develop your pieces?
At the beginning, I need to be intuitive. My starting point is always the sound or the gesture that produces it. I try to leave the material alone to find its way. I love to work in this way, but could be difficult and very tricky to develop the idea. And in order to do this, I need to listen carefully and record many samples while I work with the musicians. There are paintings by Turner entitled Color Beginning, in which he works with only light and color in a very abstract way, but then these works are also visible in the backgrounds of his landscapes. They are preparatory studies of color and light. And in the same way, I like to work with the color of the sounds that I choose, with transparency, density, and energy or stasis. I construct the texture and try to listen and look at it from different viewpoints, recording lots of material using the instruments and the musicians. I'm often attracted to the fragility of a sound. I frequently choose sounds which are difficult to emit and require great ability and concentration from the musicians. I think I choose them because these fragile sounds hide a great energy.
Usually, when you start working with the musicians, how do you start? Do you give an introduction about the piece or explain certain concepts before beginning? Or do you just let them play their interpretation and try to get closer to your expectations after listening to them?
I prefer to listen to the musicians and I love to listen to their interpretation before starting work.
When you're working with musicians, if one of them or many of them are not able to produce the sound you want, how flexible are you in trying to make the techniques suitable for the musician?
A good musician understands not only what is written in the score, but also how to translate it. I think it's important that they are allowed to do this freely, even if at times as composer we find it difficult to distance ourselves from the score. We can't insist that every detail is exactly as it was imagined. The fundamental aspects of the writing must fit into the execution, but we need to learn to listen to the work of the musician and accept that their ideas could differ a little from ours. I believe I've got better at this. At the beginning, I was more stubborn, but I understood that this was not positive and made the musician feel insecure and not free to play how they wanted.
Let's talk about your piece, Flowers Endlessly Open. How long did it take you to write this trio? How did you develop it?
I wrote it from May to August, but I thought about it for a long time. It represents my way of imagining the three instruments involved in the score. It's an image that comes from previous works, from parallel ideas developed in other scores and still in progress. In this work, I wanted to use the three instruments to create a liquid texture, floating, in which the single voices mix in one color, rich of tonalities, giving life to a changing texture. The use of the piano was the biggest challenge, and it's completely transformed, and the pianist has to draw an horizon line in which the colors of the clarinet and the cello intertwine.
The trio Catch, who performed your recent trio, did a unique job in not only performing your piece, but in also explaining different aspects of the piece to the audience. They explain how different sounds are produced, what they mean to them, which I had never seen in the contemporary music scene. So I'm interested to know how you worked with them, how you developed your piece with them.
It was quite hard. As I told you, we had just one rehearsal. Because of the lockdown, I wasn't able to work directly with the musicians. But we stayed in close contact using email, audio file, WhatsApp messages, whatever. It was immediately very clear that the trio has a great capacity to understand the composer's idea. They are able to read between the technical indications something which is not there, something that the composer leaves to their imagination. The video which you talk about is a part of a series of video entitled Orknacker. The focus is the exploration of contemporary scores that were written for the trio. When I was writing my score, I was in Trieste, that is very close to Duino, where Rilke wrote his elegies, and I looked at the trio in these videos, and I was impressed by their way of playing, and this image made me think of a elegy by Rilke, in which Rilke describes a pure space in which flowers endlessly open. The title of the score is a quote from this elegy, and the space that Rilke describes is not accessible to mankind. Too concentrated on the past and the future to be able to pay attention to the fragility of the small things. But this space could be accessible to artists. In the poem, the flowers are an archetype. They could be intended as a metaphor of an open-ended but fragile imagination, and in some way could be intended also as a metaphor of a hidden essence of composition itself, getting closer to the boundary that divides what is being perceived by intuition from what could be understood by intellectual ability.
I'm curious to know how you choose the names of your pieces. Do the titles have a connection to the acoustical characteristics of the piece, or the things that happen in the piece? Are they irrelevant, or how are they usually chosen?
Usually I don't choose title at the beginning. I mean, there could be a reference point or unconscious ideas related with my daily life experiences or my readings, my studies. More often I choose titles during the writing process or could happen at the end. In many cases, the titles have a reference to painters, poetry, colors, light. In some cases, I use flowers, not as botanical elements, but as metaphors, because in these works, the sound is like a line that spirals inwards and outwards, like the outline of the petals in a flower.
Another thing I'm curious to know is who are amongst your favorite composers, those who possibly inspired you or you just really enjoy listening to?
This is difficult because I like many composers. For sure, Sciarrino and Lackeman were my first inspiration for their capacity to give form to an imaginative and very personal sound. Generally, I like to listen to different ways of making sounds, and I love composers who are able to create tension and shapes using the energy that is inside the sound itself.
I can assume that you are interested in other art forms. Can you tell me which literature pieces, films, or paintings do you get inspirations from? Can you paint us a picture about yourself as an art consumer?
I'm rather disorganized in my approach to art. Usually I don't choose. I look at things that strike me. In art as in music, this is the use of color and light or materials. So I could say Turner or Rothko, but also the metaphysical spaces of De Chirico. And I love all the works of Kiharu Shiota, who is a very interesting Japanese performance and installation artist. I'm impressed by the strong and vital connection with the material she uses in her work, that is often a kind of still life that is still on the surface but hides lots of energy.
Contemporary music has a quite limited audience, and I'm often wondering if there's a way to attract people. And I wanted to ask you, have you ever tried to recruit people or introduce them to this kind of music, people who might usually consume mainstream products or just listen to classical music?
I think that there is too much distrust about contemporary music. I don't like it when it's included in a program with classical music as if it was a medicine to swallow. In Italy, this happens, and there are very few spaces left for contemporary music. But I'm convinced that there is great curiosity in the public and great desire for new discoveries. we have so many contemporary practices that it's quite impossible to eat all of them and not find at least one you like. The concerts of Theo Catch could be a good example of how contemporary music can be explained, illustrated, communicated, and can attract more people.
You also teach composition, and I would like to know how you do that. How do you work with the students?
When you teach composition, the relation with your students is something very complex. Love and hate are both present. One important thing for me is teaching analysis and analyze a vast amount of contemporary scores from different composers, because in this way I can understand something more about my students and about their personality. And I love to invite in my class musicians to collaborate. I always search for musicians and I ask them to perform the sketches of my students, because I think that the control over instrumental techniques is important from the very beginning.
As a final question, we are living in very uncertain times in terms of not knowing when the next concert is going to be, having to perform online without an audience. How are you doing with the situation? Do you have any tips for how to stay motivated?
Musicians, painters or writers don't do it for the public or the concerts. It's an interior dimension which is very personal. So we will continue to make music, write poetry and make art, even without the possibility of sharing it with the public. But we hope to continue this dialogue as soon as possible, because society needs art and spirituality. We all need art again. And when we share with the public our work, it acquires a deep dimension, we could say a ritual dimension in which we are all involved.
Daniela Terranova, thank you very much.